Just 1 week from today, former President Donald Trump and President Biden are going to go head-to-head in Atlanta on the CNN debate stage. It's going to be historic. It'll be the first debate ever between a sitting president and a former president, and it could potentially define a race that still has no clear front runner. Right now, we're learning new details on how both candidates are preparing, and as you might imagine, it's in very different ways. Today, President Biden is traveling to Camp David, where he's going to huddle with a tight circle of advisors for several days of intense discussion and preparation, including mock debates. Former President Trump, on the other hand, taking a less formal approach. He's holding, quote, policy discussions with some of his vice presidential contenders and other Republican allies. Let's get the latest now from CNN's Elena Treen. And Elena, we just learned that by virtue of a coin flip, Donald Trump is going to be speaking last at the debate. How is the Trump team getting ready for Thursday night?
Well, you mentioned that President Joe Biden is doing mock debates. Donald Trump's team is not. They have no plans to do any sort of role-playing or mock debates, even though in the past, and it's traditional of presidential candidates to have mock debates, Donald Trump in the past has had Rudy Giuliani, Chris Christie stand in for his opponents. They are not doing this. You're right. They are dubbing his debate as policy discussions. I'm told that he's met with vice presidential contenders, senators, policy experts. We know earlier this month, Senator J.D. Vance, a top person under consideration for his running mate, they met at Mar-a-Lago and talked about the economy, tried to sharpen his message on inflation. We know last week he met with Senator Marco Rubio, another VP contender, and Senator Eric Schmidt. They talked about his handling of the January 6th Capitol attack and democracy overall. So in my conversations with Trump's team, they say that these meetings are really about sharpening his rhetoric on certain messaging, talking about, and framing some of the more tough issues that Donald Trump is going to likely have to confront, things like his conviction, his guilty verdict in his Manhattan trial, all of that taking place behind the scenes. Now, one thing I also just find very interesting that I know his camp is wondering about is the expectations. For months, we have heard Donald Trump and his team painting Joe Biden as someone who can barely stand up for more than an hour, who has mental and physical problems. Now they're going into a debate, and it's a very low bar for Joe Biden to clear. So that's also some of the discussion that has been happening behind the scenes.
A lot going into the calculus of expectations there. Elena Treen, thank you so much. Let's get you to the White House now with CNN senior White House correspondent MJ Lee. MJ, what are you learning about how President Biden is prepping?
Well, Boris, the president has had such a busy stretch. He was out of the country for much of the last few weeks. But tonight he is headed to Camp David, where we expect the most intense stretch of debate prep to really get underway. And he and his team have really gotten started already. And the first step really has been compiling these binders that contain all of the questions and potential topics that could come up on the debate stage, and all of the answers, too, that the president could potentially give. And back in 2020, Aides had said that he tends to get very detailed and very into these topics and offering suggestions and possible answers that he might be able to give. And then as we get closer to debate night, we do expect the team to hold these mock debates and run-throughs. And you might recall that the president's personal lawyer, Bob Bauer, back in 2020 played the role of Donald Trump in these mock sessions. No word yet on whether he's going to be repeating that role play. But the campaign, I think, has this broader strategy of basically focusing on ways in which the president can hold Donald Trump accountable. We know that they want to draw a sharp contrast on issues like reproductive rights. They want to accuse the former president of promoting political violence, for example, as being a threat to democracy. And I think the campaign ultimately will see the debate as having been successful if they can paint Donald Trump as sort of this chaotic and divisive figure, and President Biden next to him as sort of the wiser and steadier alternative. We know that the campaign believes that the president has been a little punchier in his recent remarks in going after Donald Trump, and they say that they expect that side of the president to show up on the debate stage. The debate sessions, we are told by the campaign, has been led by his former chief of staff, Ron Klain, but really his most inner circle of top advisors like Anita Dunn, Bruce Reed, Jeff Zients are expected to be involved in the coming days. One thing that I will finally note that the Biden team was very much prepared for back in 2020 are a potential come their way from former President Trump, including that are directed at members of the Biden family. Certainly, we have no question that that is a possibility that they're going to be prepared for this time around. Biden aides certainly feel like that sort of comes with the territory when you're facing off against former President Trump.
Yeah, we saw some of that during their first debate back in the 2020 cycle. We'll see what it looks like this time around. MJ Lee from the White House, thank you so much. Brianna?
All right, let's discuss this further now with veteran Republican debate coach Brett O'Donnell. He has worked for multiple presidential candidates, including John McCain, Mitt Romney, and George W. Bush. I'm curious what you think each of these candidates has to do, Joe Biden and Donald J. Trump. What do they have to accomplish in this debate?
Well, both of them have to make this debate about the American people. It's very clear from the polling data that the American people are feeling like their lives are in chaos, whether it's their personal finances, the world, the border, all of those things seem out of control to them. And so both of them have to make the case that they would be the best one to bring their lives back some order, whether it's financial stability or order in the world, not about each other. But for Joe Biden, he has to make this election a choice between him and Donald Trump. For Donald Trump, he's got to make this a referendum on Joe Biden and his policies. And I think those are the primary tasks. If they do that, they'll stay focused on the American people rather than each other.
I want to play some moments from past debates, moments where candidates really made the debate work for them. Here are some of those.
I think Mr. Nixon is an effective leader of his party. I hope he would grant me the same. The question before us is, which point of view and which party do we want to lead the United States?
Mr. Nixon, would you like to comment on that statement?
I have no comment.
I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
I'll tell you how it's affected me. Every year, Congress and the President sign laws that make us do more things and gives us less money to do it with.
But can you get things done? And I believe I can.
All right, clearly moments that worked for one candidate and not the other there. How can these candidates create moments like this?
Well, that's exactly right. Those are the things that capture the attention of the American public and the media, and they get enormous coverage. And it's going to be on things that might be their weakness. For instance, obviously in 1984, one of the big question marks coming out of the first debate was Ronald Reagan's age. And as soon as that topic came up in the second debate with Mondale, he had that brilliant retort, which erased the issue from the public's mind. That's an issue in this election as well. So, I think if Donald Trump were to attack Joe Biden on his age in the debate, my guess is they'll have some clever line that could create a moment. The same thing's true for Donald Trump and his legal troubles. If Joe Biden is going to attack Donald Trump over his legal troubles, I'm sure that Donald Trump will probably have some clever line, some way to respond to it that might capture the press's imagination. So they have to take weaknesses and be able to turn them into strengths, their own and their opponents. And those are the places you look for to create big moments in the debate, because you want to highlight not only your own competitive advantage over your opponent, but your advantage on the issue.
To that point, there is an expectation that Joe Biden may point out that there is the new development and that Trump is now a convicted felon as they are debating. And there is an expectation that we're hearing from reporting that Trump may fire back by focusing on Hunter Biden's conviction. Do you think there are risks to Trump doing that?
I think there are risks for both of them. I think if Biden were to attack Trump over his conviction, I think that risks taking the focus off of voters and putting it on the personal, which I don't think voters have a big appetite for right now. The polling data doesn't suggest that the conviction is doing Donald Trump much harm, so I'm not sure what benefit it would be for Biden to focus on that. The same thing's true for Donald Trump and the Hunter case. I'm not sure what advantage that gives President Trump, except to say we both have legal troubles in our families. And I think that what that does is remove the focus of the debate from where voters really want it to be. That's on them and what these candidates are going to do to fix the problems in the country. For Biden, it's a much bigger risk because he's got a record to defend, and the public right now don't think that record's very good.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see your point in that. I will say right now the legal problems are in Joe Biden's family, but for Donald Trump, it is for him. Although I think we would expect that Trump would expand it and try to cast aspersions on Biden, and we'd certainly see that. Brett, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for your insights.